Here we go. Welcome. Welcome to Successful Co-Teaching and Collaboration in an Electronic Classroom. And I'm introducing myself. I'm Wendy Morosky. I am the CEO of Coteach, which is an educational consulting company. I am actually in beautiful Los Angeles. You can't tell with my electronic background, but it's pretty outside, just trust me. And I am also, my day job is I am the Executive Director and Eisner Endowed Chair for the Center for Teaching and Learning, which is at California State University, Northridge. So we're in the Los Angeles area. And just to make it a little bit more personal for you, I am also quarantined, much like you, or you know, I assume how quarantined everyone is. But this is my personal love, or my two personal loves, I guess, as well as my brand new husband. I was married in August. His picture's not on there, but this is my high school son. His name is Kiernan. He is, thank you. He is a sophomore almost in just, 2 weeks, a junior in high school here in LA. And this is our dog, Honey, who is sitting quietly behind me right now. So hopefully she'll stay that way. I do want to also introduce, you have some special guests here today. As we define co-teaching, you'll find out you have to co-plan, co-instruct, and co-assess. So we're not technically co-teaching today because we did some co-planning, but you'll see it's primarily me leading today. We are going to be doing some more co-teaching as we go along, but I did want to invite them because these two individuals are going to be your content coaches. They're going to be the ones who are going to be meeting with the different teams and providing some supports today right away to introduce you to them and for them to learn about you a little bit. So Barb, you want to unmute yourself and say hi to people and just give them a quick introduction to yourself?
Sure, I'm Barb Sariani. Excuse the printer sound in the background. Since this was bumped up an hour for me, I'm printing a couple things I need. I am at the Georgia Southern University, where I'm an associate professor in special education. We spend a lot of time on co-teaching, and you can imagine that we've spent a lot of time recently on online co-teaching. So I'm interested to share some things with you and to learn some things from you as well.
Right, thanks. And Barb has quite a bit of experience with online electronic classrooms as well. So, and Michelle Murphy, will you unmute yourself and share a little bit about yourself real quick too?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Michelle Murphy, and I teach at Goucher College in Towson in Maryland. And
I'm sorry, I knew Goucher.
I knew you did. I am the professor who is the coordinator for graduate studies in English language arts as well as special education. I most recently, before retiring from the school system, was at Maryland State Department of Education as Chief of Specialized Instruction. So it's great to be here today.
Yeah, so I brought you guys some two heavy hitters, and specifically, if you didn't already know, and Barb didn't talk about all of her STEM and math experience, but she has tons. So without a doubt, Barb is going to be our math specialist, and Michelle's going to be our ELA specialist. Both of them have extensive experience in special education and co-teaching, in strategies, etc. So I have them working with you a little bit today so that you can get to know them. So that's
I'm sorry, Dr. Morosky, we have some people in the waiting room, I guess.
I got them.
I was muted. Sorry. Thanks for that, Sandy. I appreciate that. Good. We got them in. Okay. And some people say they can hear and see, and that's perfect. So, all right. So let's go ahead. We're going to let people disable the waiting room. Yeah, we got that. Okay. Thanks, guys. Moving on. So let me just tell you, we're talking baby steps here today. So this is how we're going to get started. For today, we're going to just figure out what is exactly co-teaching. Some of you may have a lot of experience with it. Some of you may be new to it. Today, we're going to focus on parity, which is equality, relationships, and the co-instruction. What might it look like while the two of you are doing this together in the electronic classroom? We're going to also talk about some practical strategies for making that happen. And then hopefully we'll have a lot of fun. I know Michelle and Barb's personalities, and they're a lot of fun. We don't know you guys yet, but I've worked with Sandy a little bit, And, you know, we want to have this be an engaging, fun time for us, even though we are doing it, you know, all in Zoom, all in our rooms. We're going to have times when we ask you to unmute, where we dialogue, but we'll get in smaller groups for that, trying to model. And there will be a lot of me talking at you, then us working in groups, and then coming back together, sharing out, you know, doing a variety of that stuff. Because 3 hours to sit just in front and listen to somebody talk is great. I'm looking forward to talking at you for 3 hours. So I hope you enjoy it. No, just kidding. We'll mix it up. All right. So then we have, we're going to see you again on June 24th. That's when we take it from the baby steps to, I mean, look at these two, right? They are in sync. And that's what you and your partner will be. We will still be looking at effective or critical components for effective co-teaching, but we'll focus more on the co-planning next time, giving you strategies for co-planning, helping you guys work it out, have a little time for some co-planning. So just so you know, and the co-assessing as well, but just so you know, that's kind of the plan in breaking this up. And again, practical strategies. So that's our plan. Thumbs up if you're good with it. Can be physical thumbs up, electronic thumbs up. And by the way, for any of you who are not giving me thumbs up or I can't see you, I'm going to assume a thumbs up because it's easier for me that way. So good. I see your thumbs up. Thank you all. Perfect. Let's move on. All right, here we go. Wait a minute. Just move my little thing. So I know you all are very, very familiar with the electronic classroom and how you negotiate work with your students, but I still feel better going over some basic norm setting because I don't know who's new to this, who's not, etc. So super quickly, please stay muted unless you're like to share. Do chat if you have questions. A lot of you have been doing that already and I appreciate it. I am today going to ask Michelle and Barb to kind of keep an eye on the chat and to then unmute themselves if there's a question that maybe I haven't seen, because I'm going to kind of keep us going today. Please do keep your video on. And yes, it's just like with students where we want to see that you're awake and you're looking at us and you're not multitasking with 100 things. So there are quite a few of you who still don't have your video on. I know at least 2 of you said you're working on your videos, but for the rest of you, if you could please put your videos on. I mean, I'm not your administrator, but I would appreciate if your video is on. It just really helps. And we don't care if your little child is sitting on your lap or your dog comes and you're petting your cat and, you know, whatever. We get all that, but it does help us know that you're here, you're listening, and you're not, you know, I don't even know what you might be doing otherwise. I'm sure it's fun. If you want to crochet while you listen to us doodle, we don't care about that either. If you need to step away, just do so. You don't have to ask permission or even tell us or use any of the icons to say, hey, I'm going to the bathroom. You just go ahead and take care of whatever you need to do and then come on back. All right, couple other things. We will be breaking you into breakout rooms. I think you're familiar with it. Just follow the directions and you should be fine. Because I don't know you all the way you would know your students, or at least have an idea of your students and could pre-plan, I will be asking for certain names and I'll be doing it like that. And to be perfectly honest, because for whatever reason, when we had met before, I had written down our times and scheduled it and Zoomed it as Barb and Michelle thought, the 3 of us thought it was in an hour from now. So I have not printed out the list that Sandy sent me of your different teams. So I'll have to be asking that. It'll take a little longer than typical. This is part 1 of part 2. We've already mentioned that. And then throughout the year, you're going to also be getting some individualized support and mentoring from the content specialist. So that's the other reason that I wanted you to meet Barb and Michelle today. So you really felt like you know them, you can ask them specific questions, and they're going to be there to answer individual chats with you. We have an app we'll talk to you about in June, but it's going to make it really easy for you to communicate with them, ask them for questions, ask them for resources, supports, things like that. So that'll be the plan. And today they'll not just give you some content strategies, but they'll also get to know you. All right, that's it for my quick Zoom overall. Now I want to be a little bit more interactive. And so I'm going to ask you a question to rate yourselves in terms of co-teaching. And it could be electronic co-teaching where you are right now at Michigan Virtual. It could be somewhere else. But in terms of co-teaching, it could be in face-to-face brick and mortar school. Have you co-taught before? Not just taught. Have you co-taught before? If it's a yes, give it a thumbs up. A no, thumbs down. Again, in person or electronic, we'll take both. And then I'm going to look at my gallery view and see what you got. So I'm looking for everybody to have a thumbs up or a thumbs down, either electronic or real time. All right, excellent. And those of you who have your videos off, so I see Amanda and Scott have done it electronically. I appreciate it. Good. Brian. Okay. Thanks, Vanessa. Good. Sheila, I'm looking at you. What you got? Thumbs up or down? Thank you. Good. Yeah, it takes me just a minute to look around. So a lot of you look like you have experienced co-teaching before. Fantastic. Good. Good. So now I'm going to get a little bit more specific. So whether that was just whether or not you've done it, now I want to have a better understanding of like where you fall in terms of the co-teaching. So now please listen to all directions before you do it, and keep in mind again that I'm going to be scanning as Michelle and Barb scan as well. If you have little to no knowledge, maybe you've done it, but you feel like I don't have a whole lot of information, I got thrown into it, you put your hands either on your face, or I've changed it to near your cheeks if you're trying not to touch your face. So, okay, somewhere around there. If you feel like you have pretty good grasps, you're gonna be doing it on top of your head or near your head. And if you feel like, man, I rock co-teaching, man, I've been doing this for a while, wave your hands in the air like this, wave them like this, wave them like this. I don't care how you wave, but get your hands waving and begin. Let me see where your hands are. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of hands on heads right now. Hands on heads, good. Okay, I've got one near the face. Oh, we got some hands waving. Excellent, good. Yeah, thanks, Amanda. They were up, but then we got them waving, good. But a lot of you, it looks like the vast majority that I'm seeing. Now, Scott and a couple of the others who don't have video, I'm not able to see, but you could also write it in the chat. And it looked like that. That's okay. Still can't get the, yeah, headish. I like headish. That's good. And a pretty good grasp. Okay. So that's helpful to us too. So it looks like a majority of you are right in the middle. Now, when you're working with your coaches, like today, obviously, I'm going to be giving a lot of information to you. When you're working with your coaches, be sure to share with them a little bit more about your individual concerns, your strengths, feeling like, okay, I've got a good grasp, but here's where I've struggled in the past, or here's what I'm concerned about. And maybe as we continue on and I give you some more information about what it is and what it is not, you may actually find that what you've done in the past is not co-teaching. Maybe it's more of an in-class support or one teach one support kind of thing, but we'll find out because again, I don't know you. Just to start us into this whole idea of why are we doing this? Every school, brick and mortar, electronic, it does not matter, but everyone is becoming more inclusive. And inclusion is a philosophy. It's not a program. It's not something we can just implement with fidelity and know what's going to happen. It's a philosophy. And certainly in an electronic classroom, you guys have people there from all walks of life and for all reason. Maybe they were not good at school, brick and mortar, and so they're here. Maybe they were great at that, but they're a actress. You know, we've got a variety. You all have students with disabilities, just like everybody does, and it's a variety of disabilities. You have students who are gifted, you have English language learners, you have students who are motivationally challenged, and then everything else. And we are very aware of that. And some of those issues, even though those issues are experienced in brick and mortar schools too, some of them I think are going to be exacerbated in the electronic classroom, and especially when you have really large class sizes. So as far as I'm concerned, if I were to experience such a diverse group of students, there's no chance I would want to do it without a partner. I would always want to have somebody who is going to have my back and help me out managing all these diverse needs. And that's where co-teaching comes in. So again, I'm doing a lot of just throwing some stuff at you, giving us some basic understandings together so that we can move forward in our discussion. But when I talk about these two terms, they are not interchangeable. And yet I will sometimes see people who say, oh yeah, I have a collaboration classroom, or I do collaboration with my algebra class. And I honestly don't know what that means. In collaboration, it's just the way that we work together, right? You can collaborate on what color you're going to paint your house with your significant other. That has nothing to do with co-teaching. It's just a way that we work together toward a common goal. But if we are talking about co-teaching, now if you're taking notes, I would take notes on this. There are 3 things you must do. You must co-plan, co-instruct, and co-assess. And if you're not doing all 3 things, you're not co-teaching. So again, co-plan, co-instruct, co-assess. That means that if I just log into the class 5 minutes before and I ask my partner, what are we doing today? That's not co-teaching. Right? If we have not actually co-planned. And I do get that part of the issue is going to be, when do we co-plan? How do we co-plan? What if my partner doesn't have the same content expertise I do? All of that we're aware of. And we're going to talk about over the course of the next 6 hours. Don't worry, not all 6 of it's today. All right. So our view is that co-teaching is like a marriage. Raise your hand if that scares you. Nobody wants to admit. Yeah, there you go. Okay, good. We got a couple admitting. The rest of you, your significant others in the room, aren't they? You don't admit it, like, no, mine's good. Mine's good. With COVID, I think so many more of us are like, wow, I'm spending a lot of time with my other person. So when we say it's like a marriage, keep in mind, we have all different types of marriages. And if you don't like the marriage analogy, some of you, feel free to have a sports analogy. We have a medicine analogy. We have a dance analogy. Like, I can give you different analogies. But for right now, go with me. We're talking about two individuals who are raising children together, right? The decisions that we make are going to impact our kids, whether it's something that impacts them academically, but certainly it also impacts them behaviorally, socially, self-esteem, you know, everything. And it's really nice if we get to date. If we could start off by just getting to know the other colleagues at our school, that would be kind of nice. Who else is involved there? Who have I participated in a committee with or talked to about a couple students and felt like, wow, we're really on the same page? That's so much easier than having to just be thrown into something with someone you don't know. Reality is many teachers don't get to date. They really just get thrown into an arranged marriage, or you're voluntold that you will be doing this, not volunteering. So when we date, we get to know other people. Then we get into the engagement phase. So what happens in the engagement phase? Use the chat box and tell me about the engagement phase. I'm looking for some, you plan for the future. Perfect. Perfect. Good. Communicate. Thank you. And by the way, I'm seeing some of the other questions. We will make sure that we get you the PowerPoint, and we'll update that. I have some other documents I'm going to be uploading for you all today as well. And then the co-assessing would be like, we'll talk about the co-assessing more in June, but it's how you and your partner decide, how did the kids do? How was that assignment? Do we need to change it? It's just both being involved in all aspects of the assessment page. So it can be rough as you plan the wedding and have to make decisions. You're bringing in strengths and weaknesses of the co-partner. You're both hopeful and happy to get started. You're compromising. You're planning steps down the road. You're getting to know each other more. Okay, all of you have been, either you've been engaged or you at least know what engagement goes for. But yes, there's planning. And the problem is, in a lot of schools, when I work with them, I'm brought in, or my whole company, we're brought in when teachers are already teaching. And it's like, fix this plane while it's in flight. It's way better if we have a little bit of time to be engaged, to have time to talk about what will the room look like. And I say room, the electronic classroom, but how are we managing it? How do you plan? What are your pet peeves in terms of instruction? When, you know, do you prefer to plan at night or in the morning? What kind of activities do you hate to do? That kind of stuff. We need to do it before the class starts. So I'm really excited that most of you will know your partners, or hopefully do know your partners now for next year. So you have a little bit of time to have some of these conversations, and I'm going to get you in groups to have some of these conversations as well. Then you get into the wedding. The wedding is a little bit for the presents, let's face it, but it is, and for the presents in an electronic classroom, it may just be, we both get access to the grading book, we both get access to certain materials, we both get teacher's guides, we get some common planning time. I mean, it's not as exciting as silverware, but it could be a present. And then the marriage, and the marriage hopefully is long-term. The marriage is hopefully where we don't just have you right now for 1 year, but if you spend the time, I mean, think about special educators. Those of you who are special educators, would you raise your hands? Good, thank you. I'm seeing some of you raising your hand. I appreciate that. Good. Thank you for putting yourself on. Great. So those of you, I mean, I would assume that you have not had English 11 since you were in 11, that you haven't had algebra since you were in algebra. So trying to bring yourself up to speed on content, and frequently we have to bring ourselves up to speed in a lot of different contents. So now all of a sudden I have to do all of that. I don't want to switch subjects next year. I'm going to stick with a subject that I've finally gotten, with a partner I've finally gotten to know. So the goal for marriage is that you're going to stick with the same partner and the same subject over the course of time, which is also one of the reasons that we tend to start with ELA and math, because IEP goals and objectives are frequently in those particular areas. All right. So who are these two people? Well, we're training you. So we are your marriage counselors. If we keep throwing people into this relationship and not giving any relationship guidance, we end up with bad marriages or bad divorces. And notice that I put bad on both of those. Those are the ones that hurt the kids. Certainly, you can have a marriage that is bad and hurts kids. You can have a divorce that's good and helps kids. So it's not that we're against, sometimes you get a team and man, it's just, both of them are individually fine and good. As a team, they're not good. And so we need to find a different partner who works for them. So when I have a partnership that doesn't work, I don't say, well, you clearly are not made for co-teaching and you'll never have to co-teach again. It's just that partner who's not your good fit. So we want to try and find these goodness of fits. Because like I said, sometimes I had 20 years of a good marriage that ended up being done. And then I was able to start a new marriage, which is better now for me. Doesn't mean the last one was bad. It just means it had run its course. So we have that with partnerships too, where you feel like, okay, worked with that person for a few years and now I'm ready to move to someone else. So I want to get you guys to discuss a little bit with me. What do you think would be benefits for co-teaching? Keep in mind that co-teaching is two credentialed, trained specialists. We're not talking about a teacher and a para-educator or a volunteer or anybody like that, but two teachers who are co-planning, co-instructing, and co-assessing, sharing the classroom. Why do you think, who would benefit? What are some of the benefits? Go ahead and throw it in the chat. Benefits to kids or adults? Good, keep it coming. I'm seeing a lot of roles and responsibilities, replanning when COVID makes you have changes, flexibility, better supports for all kids. Yep, a lot about the kids. You each have your own specialty. Two heads are better than one. You're sharing the load, both working the same goal. You bounce ideas off each other, use each other's strengths, scaffolding and differentiation. Give students who might need more time some flexibility. Oh, I like help each other identify student misconceptions. Good, figuring out where the kids are not quite getting it, why. Multiple perspectives, more support, both for the students and the content teacher and the special ed teacher, I would think. Getting ideas, reach more student goals, reflection. And Barb's really positive. She's like, yeah, we got people who are excited. Really coming up with some good ideas, heading potential problems off of the past. So we have benefits to students and to adults. In terms of students, as you guys mentioned, the students, and you have huge groups, right? This isn't about saying, oh, I have 20 students in my class. You have, 100. How do we give that individual attention that we know students need? Many of them are in the electronic classroom because they weren't successful in brick and mortar. It didn't work for them for a variety of reasons. So how do we find a way to do individual attention if there's one of you and 100 of them? Also giving them access to the curriculum. How do we universally design it to make sure that students who struggled for a variety of reasons, motivational, time, disability, how do we make sure they're having access to it? Those two perspectives really help, and giving strategies to everybody's huge. In terms of teachers, you all are going to benefit as well, and this is huge. You're getting some professional development from one another. I'm not talking about what Barb, Michelle, and I are going to do with you. I'm talking about you all helping each other. In co-teaching, we find that comes up in the research over and over again, is that teachers feel like they learn strategies from the other teacher. They just got ideas from the other teacher. That's you guys helping each other. Then, of course, it's more eyes on, even for me, and I can multitask pretty well, but I love knowing that I have somebody else to read some of the chats, to get ideas, to tell me, oh, somebody's in the waiting room or whatever. I need some help with all of that. Two brains. I have tried it a million times this way. This student is not getting it. Give me something else. And then even the little bits of sometimes you tell a little joke and it's funny, no one's laughing. Really nice to have a partner who's another adult going, that was funny. Seriously, that was good. Just because our kids are 15 and they didn't get it, it was still funny. So a little bit of validation there. Or if you're running something, by the way, Brianne, I'm loving the dog and the kid. See, that's humor for me and I appreciate it. And then just, you need to use the restroom, you're in the middle of a lesson or something happens, you get a 911 call, and having another adult to jump in, to just say, I got you, go for 5 minutes, take care of whatever you need to do and come on back, we're good. We have each other's backs. So those are some huge benefits to co-teaching. We know there are barriers. We are going to address and talk about those barriers, but we want to start off with some positives, really knowing that this could be a really good thing if it's done well. Key on if it's done well. Sometimes there's the issues of not done well. So let's talk about the essential question of co-teaching. How, and my colleague, one of my best friends, Sally Spencer, and I wrote this up in one of our books, Collaborate, Communicate, and Differentiate. How is what co-teachers are doing together substantively different and better for kids than what each of them would do alone? I want you to really think about that. If you're taking notes, this is a good one, or you want to take a picture of the slide, this is a good one. Ultimately, keep coming back to, what couldn't I do if I was solo? What are the things that working with another adult, another credentialed teacher, not just a body, somebody that I trust who can bring something to this table, what can I do that I wouldn't have done before? And this is the goal. This is ultimately what we're trying to get to. We just want to give you strategies to help make that happen. So before I continue on, are there questions that you might want to throw into the chat? Oh, I love that. Yeah, making references the kids don't get. Yeah. Anything from the 80s, I know I'm going to get, and my kids won't. So if you want to co-teach with me about the 80s, I'm your gal. Yeah, technology glitches for sure, super good. Any questions? Just going forward. And that's because I've done it so beautifully so far. That's what I'm going to take away from this. I've answered everything thus far. Perfect. Okay, we're going to keep going. All right, parity. When I talk about parity, I'm talking about equality. We are both teachers. It is not the lead teacher and the support teacher. And that's a major mistake or misconception that many people have. General ed teachers lead and special ed teachers support. That's actually one model. We could have one of us lead and one of us support, but it could be either one. The idea is we're both bringing something to the table. The problem is if we don't co-plan, if we don't share, and if the special educator can't bring themselves up on the content, it does feel like I have to do everything and then I'm going to tell my support teacher what to do. That's not co-teaching. That's in-class support, and it might be a baby step. For some of you, that may be where you are on the way to true co-teaching. That may be where you're starting, and that's okay. But do know that's not true co-teaching. When we're talking about parity and equality, we're talking about being able to say, hey, if I'm doing this, you do that. And we could flip-flop those roles. So if I'm co-teaching with Linda and she's doing direct instruction to the students, I might be modeling note-taking so students can see us in a split screen and see how to model the note-taking. Maybe I'm reviewing directions for an activity that we're about to do, and we're going to be breaking into groups. My partner Linda has gone through our roster and broken them into groups and now is uploading that so the students would know which group they're going to be in, make it easier. Maybe she's setting it up on the breakout rooms. If one of us is working with a small group of students who is struggling, maybe the rest of the class is working on independent, and then I'm going to take a group of students who need more enrichment or challenging questions. We're equal. We're just saying what needs to be done and feeling comfortable. Doesn't mean we're always doing the exact same, and it doesn't mean we have the exact same skills. So in no way am I assuming that a special educator has the same amount of content expertise as the general ed teacher. Some are highly qualified or dually certified and have that content expertise, and that's great, but many don't. Same, I don't assume that our general ed teachers have the same amount of content expertise in special education and in adaptations. Some of you may be dual certified, used to be a special educator, now you're gen ed. But I don't make that assumption. I just make the assumption that you both have expertise, you should both be valued. All righty. So we are going to proactively discuss some of those pet peeves, your roles and responsibilities in just a minute. Now we're going to do some groups. Here's where I'm going to need a little bit of help as I set up the breakout rooms. And I apologize again. Normally, if I had this list in front of me, I would be able to have this done much more quickly, but we're going to have to do it manually for right now. So we are going to have what's called alternative teaching, and alternative teaching is where we have a large group and a small group. I am assuming, just based off the conversation that Sandy and I have had previously and the list she had given me before, we have a few more general ed teachers than we have special ed teachers. So I'm assuming that my large group's general ed and my small group's special ed. So hang on one moment here. What I'm going to do is just keep most of you here in this room, the general ed teachers, but the special ed teachers, I'm going to break into breakout room 1. So if you are a special educator, will you unmute yourself? And I'm going to just quickly go through the list, and you're just going to say yes if you're a special ed teacher. Adrian Rose?
Yes. Yep.
Amanda Bailey?
Yep.
Annie Butsu? Barb? Brianne Edmonds?
Yes.
Catherine Codden?
Yes.
Dee Toposian? Grace Brown? Jamie Lee? John Simmons? June Cohen? Justine Rausch? Catlin McCall? Kristen Miller?
Yes.
Laurel Horton, sorry, Laurel.
Yes.
Mark Kelly?
Yes.
Mary Race?
Yes.
Michelle Murphy? Pamela Carter? Ramona Cotton?
Yes.
Sandy Brooke?
Yes.
Sarah Touchette. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. First of all, you see on the screen, what are you bringing to the collaboration? This is I'm going to give you 10 minutes in your 2 groups. The main thing I want you to talk about, and we're not going to lead it. I'm actually going to put, let's see, I'll move Michelle into the special ed group. Barb, I'll leave you in the general ed group. We're not going to lead. We might facilitate if it starts getting quiet, but essentially we want you to talk for about 10 minutes, might be a little bit less than that, about what expertise do you bring to the table? So when I say you, it could be you personally, but also you as a group, general ed teachers. What do you bring to the table? Then what do you think the special educators are bringing to the table? If you're in special ed, obviously you're thinking, what do special educators bring to the table? And then what do your general ed colleagues bring to the table? Or what do you expect or hope they do? And then also think about what can you not do solo? What are you thinking will be a positive by having another person share your classroom? Okay, so again, your topics are, what is it that you bring to the table? What is it your partners bring to the table? And what are you thinking you can't do alone that how you're going to share your classroom to get some new stuff done? All right, and then I'll let everybody know when we're going to bring yourselves back, but it's going to be probably, I'm looking at the time, probably about 8 minutes. Okay, and I shall open the rooms, and general ed teachers, you're staying in this room. Here you go. Okay, so you guys can go ahead and mute yourselves. I mean, not mute, unmute yourselves and just start a conversation. And I'm gonna move into the other room, make sure they've gotten going. Barb is here if there's any question about what the task is, but otherwise just start talking.
I have a question real quick. So I've only done this once before, and right now I don't remember how to move to another room.
You don't have to move because you're general ed, right?
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so I'm not the person moving.
Nope, you're fine. But
Same question for special ed.
What's that?
Sorry, same question. How do I move to a different room? I'm special ed.
Okay, so you have been given, what is your name, by the way?
Laurel Horton.
Okay, you're, okay, I will move you right now.
Okay.
I'm also special ed.
Who else is special ed?
Me, Vanessa Melo.
Oh, I was gonna say I need a name. Okay, I moved you just now. I must have just missed you guys. Anybody else special ed? Everybody else general ed in this group? Okay, so you're just gonna stay here and start talking. All right, and I'm gonna go join the other room.
There are many of the general ed.
To piggyback what you said, Ramona, like looking at their emotional needs, we might have some input to that, insight to that, to know like kind of where to go and what they need.
And their family background, I feel like because we have those small group opportunities and we meet with them and the families a little bit more, we can bring that into our teaching and planning.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I was thinking because our classes are so large in general ed, even those teachers don't know their students that well. and we have a much smaller group, and even our caseload kids, we have more opportunities to get to know them and build relationships, unlike some of our gen ed teachers, because they're just overloaded.
Someone may have said this already, but the kind of a different set of eyes and a more creative ideas and how you can modify assignments and still achieve the same kind of content mastery measures or data. Something like that would be pretty useful. And I jumped in a little bit late, so that might have been said already.
No, I don't think that was good. That was new.
I like the modified strategies approach for our small groups. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's something that's missing, I think, in our curriculum. It's been so static that I think in English, you've been able to figure out how to modify a lot of the writing assignments. In math, I think we have a more difficult time figuring out how to modify those assignments, or, you know, figure out those accommodations for those students.
And even it's been nice that we can modify for the IEP students, but also the lower level students that are in the regular ed. So I often pull or work with those kids too. So it doesn't even only have to be those IEP kids in the whole group instruction.
Yeah, so that's a good part.
I would think that 30-day IEP is almost like an intake interview with them. You know, we just get a whole lot of background knowledge of what has worked and what has not. And for instance, you know, like a behavioral plan, if we know it didn't work for them, then we know that it, you know, an environment. So I think it's almost like we have that back door to why they're here and what worked for them and what didn't.
Guys, another question that I want to throw on here is, keep in mind that typically, again, I do not know your faculty, so go from that. But a lot of times there's resistance from general educators thinking that, why would I share my classroom? You know, they're my students. I'm the lead. You guys are welcome to work with your kids. Or, you know, as Brian, you mentioned, even if you take more of the kids who are struggling, they're your kids, the strugglers. So I want you all to think about how you would really sell yourselves to your colleagues. Like, why would I want to work with you if you don't know the math the way I do, if you don't know the English the way I do? You kind of, I'm doing a whole issue for Teaching Exceptional Children right now. I'm editor of a whole special issue, and it's on self-advocacy. And we as special ed teachers really need to self-advocate. I'm really glad, Brian, that you've got a great gen ed teacher. And again, I'm not indicating that these ones don't. I don't know your teachers. It's just typical. It's typical to feel that way. So how are you guys going to really emphasize your skills to them? You have to sell yourself.
Yeah, I think, you know, this is our second year. So I think the teachers, we have some, I think it's coming along, you know, that survey, we had some positive feedback. So it is a process, but definitely we do have to be confident, you know, in the pairing, and think about what we can bring to the table and not let the curriculum make us feel inferior. Because I think sometimes, especially like if I was pushing into geometry or algebra, that could really, you know, make me feel inferior. But we have to think about what can we do to support that curriculum, even if we don't know that curriculum. You know, what can we bring to the table?
Oh, shoot.
I just want to add, like, oh, sorry, Laurel. I want to add that, like, I do think that planning together will help us with that, because right now it's kind of like they're just giving it to us and we're just being that support teacher. But when we're set up for a different model,
I think my co-teachers spend so much time, you know, with the special ed students. They have the small groups, they have the resource room. And, you know, I mean, I have small groups too, but it's not with the same group of students every week. And I think they get to know the kids maybe a little bit better, the group that they're working with.
What else?
I think generally, oops, sorry, my special ed cushion always has like really good tools that work for her kids. Like, she knows these kids love graphic organizers, and maybe that's something I don't use a lot in my class because I don't, but it works really well for her kids. So I love that. And then it's something I can use for other kids too, because maybe it's something that the other students, even if they're not special ed, can benefit from.
Is also the time that they have to spend with individual kids and the differentiated learning they can provide them that we really can't, given the class sizes. So
I don't know if I was switching my headset, so somebody already said this, I apologize. But I feel like I really appreciate the help they give me in like knowing their students or knowing, like I had an issue with a student sort of getting upset at something that I was asking her, or she didn't like me calling her name out loud during class. And so having somebody in there to kind of let me know in the moderator chat, like what was going on with the student behind the scenes, like much better than I could from just reading IEP, and helped me deal with her in a way that allowed her to stay in class, and all of that. And so it's helpful, I think, in that way, because that's where they're trained more in how to have to handle different personalities and all of that.
So let's get to the last question, which was, Wendy, what was it? It's something about what can I not do alone?
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, we're going to wrap this up. These guys are going to come back, but in special ed, I was asking the group over there too, that they also need to self-advocate. They need to make sure they let you know that it's not just, I'm just working with my kids or the kids who struggle, but we're both here for all the kids. So what is it that you guys couldn't do solo? What is something that you're feeling, Pamela just mentioned about like monitoring some of the chat and identifying some of the issues that are happening behind the scenes, or when they do their 30-day IEP, they learn a lot about the individual kids that maybe you haven't had time to learn. But what else could you not do solo?
I think for me, one thing that like my special ed push in right now does that I could not do by myself is I have like a question and answer room that like if a kid hops into that room, they have a specific question that needs more than just a chat answer. So he can hop in there and help them. And that's available to any of the students, not just my special ed students. So that's one thing I think is really awesome that I could not do by myself and don't have the time to stop the whole class to answer a special longer question.
Right. Yeah, that's a fantastic example.
Or maybe even though you know the answer, trying to get the student to understand, which I think in a general ed perspective, sometimes I feel like I don't have the tools to reach those students that need the special ed support. And so that's when it's nice having that push-in teacher who can then pull them into a room and give them the support that they need that I just don't have in my toolbox.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, so I've been co-teaching here since quarantine with Scott Huffman. And I would see that there's so much more individualized instruction that can take place, whether it's for a student, who is in special education or not. There's some things that you just cannot do. There's just too many students. Uh-oh, my internet. So I think that definitely is something that the kids benefit from.
Yeah, good. Excellent. Well, in a couple minutes, or not even a couple minutes, a couple seconds, we're going to add, I think the special educator should be joining us as well. But yeah, that's the idea of not just looking, and I think you just mentioned this too, not just saying it's for the kids who have IEPs, but for all of the students, because again, you all know that there are lots of students, whether they have a 504 plan or an IEP, students who are struggling with a variety of reasons. It could just be motivational and not academic at all. It could be time management. It could be a variety of things. So using the expertise from both groups is really, really helpful. So we've gotten, the other group has just joined us. So just really, really briefly, whoops, I skipped ahead. I didn't need to do that. There you go. What were, just a couple of you, what were something that you felt like you discussed in your group, or a takeaway from your perspective? Let's just get one or two from each side.
If I can speak for the special ed group, one of the major points was the ability to build trust, and how important that was, that the special educator and general educator had built a relationship.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Michelle. And actually, let me just pop it over to Barb real quick. What was like a key takeaway that you heard from the general ed group that you were with? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Sorry. I'm sorry, I have walked away. What question are we talking about?
Oh, sorry, just your takeaway from the general ed group. Michelle just said that one of the big things she heard coming out in the special ed group was the importance of building trust and how important that is. What do you think one takeaway was from the general ed group that you were with?
I think it's a sense of support. The gen ed teachers feel like the special ed folks have relationships that they don't have with individual students, and those relationships help the special ed teachers get a little bit farther with those kids.
Perfect, good. Would all of you concur? Were those some big takeaways? Okay, perfect. One of the things I heard on both sides a couple times was the word push-in teacher. And that is the model you all have had. And that is a little bit different than co-teaching. So I do want to clarify that. Push-in is a little bit more like what we call in-class support. It means I come in, I push into the room, and most good special educators figure out their way. You know, oh, there's a kid who's having difficulties, by all means, I'll go into this room and I'll start working with them. Or I noticed you explained something and I can just tell the students are getting it. So I'm going to say, let me rephrase. I'm going to rephrase real quickly, or I'm going to give another quick strategy, but I'm doing it very reactively. There hasn't been a whole lot of prior planning necessarily. It's just me being there and bringing in my toolbox and my expertise to use as needed. The idea behind co-teaching is that it does require a bit more co-planning, which, you know, when you're busy teachers and you've got everything else happening with this COVID stuff, kids at home and all that other stuff, I know is probably the last thing you want to hear. But by being proactive about it, a lot more gets done because the special educator also knows the content, knows where we're going. You guys have come up with some of those great strategies. We don't have to come up with them on the fly and do them after the fact. We now can come up with things in advance so that we can do them strategically for everybody. So that's a general idea. Let me continue kind of moving on with this thing. Let's just say, please go with me on this. If it's a given that you're both teachers, you both have expertise, you share the students in the room, we know that the students have diverse needs, and we know that in order to share a classroom, we need to collaborate, have respect, have trust, and communicate. Okay, so if those things are given, then I want you to, with your partner or partners, start to begin to discuss how you will communicate. Like, are you somebody who communicates great on Google Docs, or do you prefer more of a face-to-face kind of a Zoom sort of thing, or FaceTime, or whatever you decide? Do you communicate better in the morning as long as you've had your coffee, or are you a late night planner? That right there might mean that you guys are going to end up planning asynchronously if we have completely different times. What kind of roles and responsibilities? One of you may say, hey, look, I'm really good at just monitoring the chat. I like that. Or I'm really good at doing role. I'm really good at setting up things. I'm really good at finding YouTube videos to pull in, whatever. What are your boundaries? What are some things that really are just your pet peeves, or something you've experienced about yourself that you know? Like, I'm a complete type A person. I know that about myself. I know I talk a lot. I know that surprises you guys because I've been so quiet so far. But I know that. So if I'm co-teaching with you, I'm going to be flat out and say, I do that. We have to come up with a system where you can nicely, kindly, somewhat surreptitiously tell me to shut up. And I will give you a strategy right now. One of my partners, his name is Marty. Marty and I talk a lot, both of us. So our strategy now for letting the other person know that story has gone on forever and you need to wrap it up is we say, absolutely. And when your partner says absolutely, and like telling a story and your partner says absolutely, and you're like, yeah, oh, okay, that means to shut up. So it's a good strategy for us, although sometimes I just nod and smile because I'm like, yeah, he validated me. But it's better than somebody going like, where everybody can see, come on, you know, or having to chat like, stop, we're way behind, stuff like that. So there's a strategy for you. Problem solving, managing conflicts. So one of the resources I want to share with you all, and I am now going to put this up for you, I think. Hang on one second. I got to pull up my chat. I'm going to upload a file for you called the share worksheet. Okay, it should be in your chat box. Will everybody check to see if they've got it? Nod. Okay, good. Excellent, good. All right, thank you, I appreciate that. Good, okay, so the share worksheet is up there. Go ahead, download it, do whatever it is you need to do to make sure that you have access to it. I'm also right now going to put up a Padlet that you can also copy, because if you lose a share worksheet or something happens and you want more resources for co-teaching, we have tons of resources, and I'm going to share this with you at the end of today as well, but there is another resource that will work for you. What I'd like you to do is use this share worksheet to have a conversation with your
It was recording, it stopped.
Now it is.
Thank you. Yeah, I just put it back on. Thank you. When we took the break, I paused it. Thanks for that. Okay, so I'm hearing people, or I'm not hearing, I'm seeing that people have said more individualized questions, address questions more, smaller sizes, easier to reach the kids, get the same instruction. You could do it for a review, smaller group, class size, exactly. The key on that same content, same way, is smaller group. That's it. That is the key. So obviously, if I'm doing anything, maybe for those of you who are English teachers, you're reading something and maybe there's a conversation you want to have about racism. Well, to have it with 100 kids, I mean, even 50 is huge, but to have a smaller group to dialogue with, or you're trying to teach a group of math students how to use their graphing calculators, and you're modeling it and you're showing it, and you've got, you know, on your screen, you're demonstrating, and you still got to look at the kids to see if they're doing it correctly. Those are things that you just want to have a smaller group. So that's just one of the reasons. So same content, same way. The second one is same content, different way. Okay, I want you all to think about your content. When might you get kids in different groups to teach something where you're teaching the same content, but you would do it in a different way? So again, use the chat box and give me an example of when you might both teach the same content, but in a different way. I'm only going to change. I knew we would get a bunch of people saying different learning styles. So just FYI, there is no empirical research supporting learning styles. And in fact, it's a big thing in the special ed literature, but learning preferences. And I know that may seem semantic, but learning styles research was like visual, auditory, kinesthetic, tactile, and we were starting to think people had a style. But even though I do better if I see things, so I'm primarily more visual and that's my preference, it doesn't mean once you show it to me, I learn it. I still have to have a context. I still have to, and depending on what it is, there are some things I might do better hands-on. So just FYI for future, we now neurodevelopmental profiles. I know, just, it sounds lovely, but we all do have different, you know, the way our brain works, neuro, right? And the way it develops, it is different. I'm really good in special education. I have a PhD. I'm super smart in special ed, and obviously very humble too. But I also am really stupid when it comes to other things, like when it comes to remembering to put gas in my car. Luckily with COVID, I don't need to. But there are things where I have friends who are like, I thought you had a PhD. Like, that does not mean that I'm smart in everything, right? So we all have things that we're good at. So back to same content in a different way. One of you likes to teach the content one way. One of you likes to teach it the other way. And your kids are going to want to learn it in a different way. So I love that some of you are saying that just the different ways, the different ways that they learn, modified strategies, scaffolded, have different levels of readiness. Now keep in mind, it's the same content. So I'm not saying that one of you is doing less and one of you is doing more, but breaking it into parts. I don't want it to be a modified lesson and enrichment lesson. So a couple of you have said that. That's going to come to another approach. So that is appropriate, but that's not what we're talking about here. Parallel teaching is half the class and half the class. So it's like heterogeneous. It's not the kids who didn't get it and the kids who get it, right? It is just about saying, we're going to have different ways of presenting it. So math teachers, aren't there multiple times when you show the teacher, the kids, you could do it like this, or you could do it like this? Nod, math teachers. Okay, so how about that? Jamie, go ahead.
Yeah, we actually just did that this week. I spent class time saying, well, here, I'm going to do it this way. And then I spent another 5 minutes doing it the other way as well, when I could have easily split that into 2 groups and said, if you like to understand why, stay here and I'll show you this way. If you're someone who will take a shortcut and run with it and don't care why it works, go over here.
Perfect.
That could have been a perfect way to use this.
Yeah, what were you teaching?
We were teaching completing the square when using equations of circles.
I mean, I did that yesterday too, just for fun. I mean,
Right,
who
totally.
doesn't? Like, I was at the pool doing that. All right. So, but that's a perfect example. So now, Jamie, I'm going to take that and ramp it up a little bit. So just like you said, it could be, hey, if you want to do it this way, stay with me. If you want to do it this way, go with Wendy, right? So you and I are co-teaching, and they could do that. Another possibility is we randomly put people half with you, half with me. We teach them in our own way. Then we flip-flop the kids and teach them again. So in terms of you and me, we each only had to prepare our mini lesson, 10 minutes or whatever it was, 15 minutes or whatever it was, and we teach it. And then we replicate it again. So we don't have to pre-plan. Again, we just teach that same thing. I have to be good with one thing, one way, and I do it twice. For the kids, it exposed them to solving that problem in 2 different ways, but also in terms of their brain, they're like, Jamie's way, Wendy's way. And it's going to help them retain that later on, because it's not just, I don't know, you showed me 2 different ways, and then they conflate it and they do half of this problem and half of that, and they're confused, right? And you only had to take 5 minutes because that's all the time you had. Okay, so parallel teaching is, we could do same content in the same way just to make it smaller. Same content in a different way, because we know kids learn differently and we teach differently. The third one is different content. So we have different things that we need to cover. And instead of, hey, let's everybody review for the test for the first 20 minutes, then let's get 20 minutes of new content. Instead, I would take a group and review for the test. You would take a group and teach new content, and then we flip-flop. Or maybe English teachers. Maybe you need to use some time with direct instruction on, I don't know, reviewing poetry or figurative language or whatever it is. And then you also need to have some time on the big writing project, the research project they're going to be working on. Again, you don't everybody stay in the group with me. Now, everybody stay in the group with me on some other topic. You and I divide, so it helps everybody had time to work on writing with me. Everybody had time to learn whatever the content was with you. And then we flip-flop groups. Also divides the group. All right, so that's what it looks like. It's not I plan and teach on my island and you plan and teach on yours, because we still have to talk. You have to make sure that what I'm doing in the writing correlates with what we're doing for the standards and what we're trying to accomplish. You know, if we're working with 9th graders, we've got to make sure what they're doing will get them ready for 10th grade, and vice versa, right? I need to know what you're teaching, because I might need to give you strategies. If you show me the lesson that you're going to do, I might say, wow, they're totally going to lose you on that. Here's something, you need to make it more concrete, or you need to give them that graphic organizer. Some of you mentioned that special educators love graphic organizers and general ed may not use them as often. It could be we create one and make it available to everybody. That's more universal design for learning. That's something that could be good for everybody. So some strategies for parallel. As I mentioned, learning preferences or neurodevelopmental profiles would be the word to, but you guys got it. I mean, they learn differently. And as long as we respect that and say, we'll move you into these different breakout rooms. Also use different strategies. So there's more heterogeneous groups. It doesn't feel like you're always clustering the same kids together. And you could use, like, there's a cute app called the Hat app, which is like pulling names out of a hat. You could do something like that. You could say all the boys are in one group and all the girls are in another this time. I guess you'd need to have multiple groups nowadays, because then we'd have to have gender fluidity, and I'm not sure how that would work, so play with that one. Different interests, you know, could say if you want sports examples, come into this group. If you want literary examples, come into this group. I don't know. You can just have A's and B's. You can make them a bunch of different things. It's also a really good idea to have brain breaks built in, and we modeled that explicitly today. You guys didn't know that, but we did. What we did was, when I broke you into all the different individual teams and just gave you 5 minutes to connect with your partners, I didn't move Michelle and Barb, because if I move them, yeah, sure, they'd listen to a team to make sure they're talking, but it was really about you guys as teams talking. It really wasn't about us. So the 3 of us stayed in our large group in order to connect with each other to make sure, okay, remember, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And how did your group go with the special ed teachers, Michelle? And Barb, how did your group go with the general ed teachers? So we were able to get on the same page while our students were working, and you guys are our students. All right, so we're explicitly doing some of these things. And then finally, it's always good when we've got groups if we give them some choice. So again, those choices could be, how do you want to demonstrate competency? I've told you what the goal is. We have a rubric. We're letting you know what you have to show us. How do you want to do it? If someone gets some of their input, and if you find out you have a large group who really wants to create an iMovie about the topic that you're doing, great. Maybe we have a group that's going to be facilitated on that. Somebody else wants to do web quests. And these are just a couple examples. Obviously, you can have some who say, I just want to do the paper pencil test and turn it in. Great. I will facilitate those of you who want to do that. Those of you who want an alternative to a paper pencil test, and obviously I don't mean paper pencil, but multiple choice or writing an essay or something like that. Okay, so those are just some ideas to get you going for parallel teaching. Again, I'm going to do my very quick, not very strategic or helpful, but I'm going to do it anyway. Thumbs up if you're doing okay with these concepts. Thumbs down if you have questions that need to be addressed. All right, I'm getting a lot of thumbs up. Thank you. Does the baby get it, Adriana? Adriana? Yep, the baby got it. Okay, so if I can do this for a baby, then maybe high school teachers. We'll see. All right, I'm going to keep moving. Doing this kind of quickly, throwing stuff at you. Next one is stations. Stations is something that we see a lot in elementary school. I want you all to scrub your brain of thinking that it's an elementary school technique. Stations is hands down my favorite. By the way, I didn't mention this, but almost all of my teaching experience is high school. So that's my love, that's my forte, and I've co-taught in pretty much every subject under the sun. I have yet to have a class not like stations. They just feel like it goes quickly, they're focused, I can have accountability broken in, I have smaller groups that I can work with. So I'm a huge fan of stations. Stations is different than cooperative learning groups. I will repeat, stations is different than cooperative learning groups. Many of you probably use cooperative learning groups where you break students into the breakout rooms, and maybe you have 4 to 6 students in that room, maybe you have more, but you have students and they're all doing the exact same task, and then they come back and report. Yes, you do this? Some of you do this, some of you don't. Some of you are just staring at the screen and smiling because you're totally multitasking, but that I get. Okay. I can't be there. I can't use proximity control. I'm doing what I can. So I appreciate that. Sarah, I got a thumbs up on you. I appreciate it. Thank you guys. These cooperative learning groups are fine, but they're all doing the same thing. The beauty of station teaching is that they're doing different things in those small groups, and then they're rotating. So it moves it away from just, I'm in a large group and now I'm in a small group doing the same task, and then I'm back in the large group. I'm doing something different. I'm doing something different. I'm doing something different. So I could be monitoring one group, like I'm physically in the small group with you, like Barb and Michelle did, where they were with the small groups, kind of watching, a little bit of facilitating, but also listening. So you could be there, or you could be bopping around to the different groups to kind of see that they're doing what they're supposed to do. So you can have them monitored by a co-teacher, or have it be an independent group that's going on, multiple independent groups. So I want to give you guys a few different examples. Oh, I've already gotten a few people on here also thinking about, you could have group learning by inquiry versus DI. Yeah, a lot of different things. All right, with stations. So I mentioned linear equations. So solving systems of equations, math teachers. There are 3 ways, correct? What are they? Solving systems of equations.
Substitution.
Good, you got one. Somebody else.
Graphing.
And then elimination.
And elimination. Yay, our math teachers got them. Okay. Notice I didn't ask the English teachers. We would have been here for a long time. Like, I don't know. All right. So think about that as stations. You are talking about solving systems of equations, and how cool would it be if we had one that was specifically teaching or reviewing, you know, the graphing. Another one that was doing elimination. And then on maybe the substitution one, maybe you have a Khan Academy video that they're watching on it. You can come up with stuff. Or you could, another thing you could do for your stations is you can record yourself teaching. If you feel like I can't be in all the places at once, record yourself and then have the students watching you. So essentially you're teaching multiple times. And then every time they whip through that particular station, they're watching a video of you, right? You can have something that's accountability. For English teachers, think about figurative language. I'm going to have a station that introduces hyperbole. I'm having a station on onomatopoeia, metaphor, simile, personification, whatever, as many as we want. It could be that they get through 3 of the stations today and 3 of the stations tomorrow. It could be they only do 1 of the stations today, and then over the course of time, they're going through them. It's completely up to you. But these are different ways that you can get them engaged, make them smaller groups, and then think about how you and your partners are going to divvy up the roles of creating the content for it. It doesn't have to be like, I'll say, hey, I'll do metaphors, similes, and personification. And then others of you, you know, the other person says, I'll be doing that, you know, whatever the other ones are. I'm saying we've got quite a bit of group chat happening. We had people writing it out. Yeah, stations would be like breakout rooms, exactly. So in all of these, when we do parallel teaching, it's breaking them into breakout rooms like we did, we're about to do in parallel. We did alternative, which was large group with general ed and small group. And then I did a bunch of individual groups that wasn't stations because we didn't rotate around, but you were just with your partner. Okay. And then let's see what we've got. Very interactive. Yes, the CMs, which is the case managers, special ed teachers, could be helping. This is about parallel teaching. I mean, excuse me, about co-teaching, you guys. So this is about, sorry, I'm moving forward, didn't mean to. This is about both of you helping with all of it and deciding, you know, I'm comfortable teaching this content, but I'm not comfortable with teaching this one. Both of you are sharing. Okay, so what it does not look like is this. We really have to be careful that we're not saying all the special ed students are in this group, all the gifted students are in this group. Now, if you do formative assessment, say in math, and you say, oh, we've got a group who didn't get this concept and we want to spend some time on this concept, but these other students could be doing some enrichment, not moving on in the lesson, because if they do, this group that you're working with to reteach is lost. But maybe while they're working on some of the content, some independent practice, we've identified some students who need some reteaching. One of us starts, and I think, Jamie, that's like your Q&A kind of group. It could be an identified, based off looking at these students' work, we're going to identify some students, say, hey, come over here into this breakout room, get some support, and maybe it's for 20 minutes while the rest of the group is working on something. There might be a student who stays in that small group with me for 5 minutes, and it's clear they've got it, they move on. There's other students who stay for the whole 20 minutes. It's really dynamic and really flexible. Okay, so some strategies for this. Hang on, I gotta keep moving your, my box, sorry. There we go. So again, remember that for stations, we're talking about multiple stations, and it could be, you could have 3 stations, you could have 12 stations, you could have as many as you want. But obviously some of them are going to be without you or your co-teacher. So you're going to have to think about how can I structure them so that students can be successful independently. Many of your students have to do asynchronous lessons. They have homework, they have all that. So there's stuff that we're expecting them to do independently anyway. This is now doing it independently, but within the structure of time that you have them, so that you can get them going and then still go in and check on them occasionally. So I would say having directions already written really clearly and then either posted to a Padlet that they could go to or uploaded in the chat room, or have one student who's like the facilitator to have the directions to share the screen with everybody. Even practicing those rotations, like a couple of you weren't as familiar with getting into breakout rooms and didn't know, do you have to do it? Do we have to do it? So reviewing that, especially if we will frequently be getting you into, sometimes it's stations and you'll rotate, sometimes it's 2 groups, sometimes it's with a partner. Having them know there's a variety of ways, and that we can give a reminder. So I can broadcast a message to everybody to say, I'm bringing you back in a minute, wrap it up, or I'm bringing you back in 5 minutes. That kind of thing is very helpful. Also, when you're doing stations, if you are a brick and mortar school, my suggestion would strongly be have the kids move, because we want to get them up, get them moving, etc. When it's electronic, we as the educators, it makes much more sense to keep them in the same breakout room, and we are the physical ones who move around. It's less movement, but you could still build in some stretch breaks for them. So saying after 20 minutes, we're going to give you a 3-minute transition break while one of us would come into your group or leave your group, etc. You can use timers and audible signals to let them know that the time is about to come up. I've also seen teachers in electronic classroom do some cool stuff to encourage students to transition quickly if they have to move from their small groups back into the large group. Now we can just kind of close the rooms. It used to be that was they had to do it. But you could say in the large group, as soon as I tell you to transition in, I'm going to have some answer cues up on my screen for 20 seconds. After 20 seconds, I'm closing them and they're gone. It encourages students to come back very quickly and engage in the next lesson. So I think that's kind of clever. Also, Johnson & Johnson's work on collaborative grouping would tell us that it is helpful to have a facilitator in a group, a recorder, a reporter, a timer, a materials manager, or whatever. So identifying those in advance, and special educators tend to know students quite well. So it's great if special educators can help identify students to be in these roles, and it could correspond with their IEP goals and objectives. We may have some social goals and objectives or behavioral ones that we want them to participate more. We want them to speak out. We want them to take a lead. And so this might be a great way to do both. And then the last one I have on there is also think about in terms of those directions that you have for all the independent stations, making sure that they're available, and maybe even adding voice, because again, we don't know what kind of abilities, disabilities, or needs our students have. So if you're able to add voice to a PowerPoint slide or any of that stuff, it would be helpful. Okay, how are we doing in terms of, I've got only a little bit more time and I've got a bunch more content for 2 more approaches. Everybody okay? Thumbs up? All right. I know and now, I don't know, for better or for worse, I'm also making you feel what it's like when the students get a lot of content all at once. You need a brain break, all right? And so we're going to be getting you into these 2 groups in just a few minutes. Yeah, and the groups that I know you're not knowing about the students that come in, I'm seeing that in the chat room. But that's, again, very helpful when you have 2 of you, because at least you're getting a sense, and maybe you start to develop a way to send out notifications to students or find out if they're going to be there or not. With 1 person, it's hard to manage all of that. With 2, it's more doable. I'm not saying it's like easy, but it's more doable. All right, alternative teaching we already modeled, and that is with large group and small group. So that could be, that small group might be the students who need some pre-teaching. So maybe you ask some students, if you know that they're interested and motivated to come in, you could have them come in 10 minutes before everybody else gets started. You could do some pre-teaching. Or as everybody does the warm-up, you work with them on pre-teaching. That could also be the group that does reteaching, and it could be the group that does enrichment. And you could have multiple small groups going on. It doesn't have to be just the large group, small group. You could have multiple small groups. But the large group is doing something that doesn't move on in the content, because you don't want the small group missing it. Now, let's say you did that formative assessment and you've identified a small group of students who already has that content. They would be bored. That would be the time, while everybody else is getting new instruction, these kids who have already met those criteria maybe meet with one of you to get some enrichment ideas, stuff that they could go and do and build to build their strategies. What it shouldn't be like is just the kids with special ed who have IEPs in their own little room. This is not the goal of co-teaching or inclusive education. Strategies, already talked about a couple of these, that separate room, and you could even have them just go if they want, or they could raise hand if they want. And it's not, and I think Vanessa or a couple of you mentioned, it shouldn't just be about the students with IEPs. It's just anybody who needs that support. Another thing I've seen teachers do that I thought was really proactive, difficult to do for all of your students, but for those that you're starting to get to know who have specific needs, having individualized electronic folders that already have like some enrichment work in it, or have some specific work related to IEPs and specially designed instruction that you need to do. Even the students who have attendance issues, so you're keeping a folder of all of the work that they've missed, so that you're able to give it to them when you see them in a little breakout room, having that quick one-on-one. And even allowing all of the students at one point in time, maybe have a time period of like 2 weeks, where you're going to have small groups come in, 5 students with one of you, either one of you, to connect, make personal connections, talk to them, give them some feedback, maybe tell them any missing assignments they have, check comprehension, but making that personal connection that is just not possible when it's one of you, all of them, and you just have to always be giving new content. So those are some strategies for that. Last but not least, and again, we will be coming back to all of this, but this is just to start you thinking about the different ways you and your partner might be co-teaching in the future. Team teaching, that's the one that the term is used synonymously all the time with co-teaching, but it's one of the 5 approaches. So it's just one. If you notice the A and the B are right there up front, that just means that the 2 of us are doing this simultaneously. We're together and we're both sharing the lead. We're sharing the stage, if you will. All right, I'm seeing a couple questions here. If we have small group, so small groups in breakout rooms, I saw a little misunderstanding. We can absolutely legally have special ed teachers work with kids with and without disabilities, kids who have IEPs and kids who do not. And general ed teachers can have kids without disabilities and kids who are not, who have disabilities and who do not. So everybody is able to work with everybody, even in small groups. The key is the co-planning. So if you're really co-planning, that means both of us are ready to work with everybody. Okay, so think about how helpful that's going to be for both of you. You're not going to feel stigmatized that I only am working with the students with disabilities. And now I have all these other kids who are struggling and nobody's there to help them. So we really need to be able to, both of us help everybody.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the only caveat in Michigan is the funding source. So we cannot invite them to our small groups during that different time that we have planned the small group pullout. So we're trying to get away from that. If we go to a co-teaching model like we've wanted to, we plan all of our instruction using one of these approaches, and it's during gen ed time that we're planning like the large group, small group. So we're doing it during gen ed time, and we can pull all those gen ed kids or whomever into either group.
So you're just talking about your like the resource room time or the special ed time.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be when they're doing specially designed instruction focused just on IEP goals and objectives.
Yes.
This is when we're all of our time together, because students with disabilities are general education students first. And both of us can help all of them. That is the co-teaching part. But yeah, I see you're just clarifying that for that small group. Good, thank you. Glad we got those questions, good ones. All right, so team teaching, we're sharing the stage. Now, the reason I say it's not tag teaming is because there tends to be this feeling like, I don't want to step on your toes, so I'll do slide 1, you do slide 2, I'll do slide 3, you do slide 4. And why? How is that adding benefit to students other than sometimes confusing them? So keep in mind that when we're doing this, there's a reason. I want you guys to think about different times that it might have been great to have 2 different voices. When do you think would be helpful for us to share the stage, both be in front of the kids simultaneously? What would be an example? Use the chat box and I'll look for that. Okay, we got some people who are loving each other and they've got this model, that's great. When would the 2 of you both want to be in front of the students simultaneously? What might you be teaching where that makes sense? 2 different strategies to solve a problem, exactly. Modeling something where you say, oh, I do it this way. I don't get that. I do it a different way. And you guys are giving these, different perspectives, maybe different perspectives on something you read, right? I took it this way. I took it a different way. Talking through a thought process, great one. Offering various perspectives, good. I find that debating is a great time for team teaching. Debating, interpreting poetry, yes. It's okay that how I read it and you read it were completely different. Analyzing it and seeing, giving examples, these are good. Debating, role-playing, modeling. Even in the beginning, we're supposed to have a hook. How much fun would it be if the teacher or the students logged in and you guys were there doing some kind of a funny, virtual skit or something that's cute and fun and makes them laugh and goes, all right, it was kind of weird and quirky, but I like it. right? Oh, somebody just, Sandy says she can go to algebra and just play the ignorant student. So if you need somebody to volunteer to be an ignorant student, Sandy is your gal. Good. All right, so team teaching, again, don't make it just a bounce. We're both giving my slide, your slide, but actually good. Oh, we got some naturally funny people. Use it. Team teaching is the way to go. It's super fun. But it's just make sure that you don't feel like it's, you know, back and forth, kind of boring. So what could you do? Well, you could develop some nonverbal and verbal signals. So obviously you could chat to each other, you could text to each other, but even when we say things like, Barb and Michelle, I'm very aware that it is 12:30, so I'm just letting you know that I'm watching the time and I'm wrapping this up. I've just given them a verbal signal that I'm keeping my eye on the time and I'm about ready to transition to them. Or if we were talking and I'm doing this to the screen where everybody can see it, my partner knows, wait, timeout. And she might say, wait, why are you doing timeout? Because I've been looking at the students' work and it's looking like a lot of them are confused. I think we need to back up and give more examples or something so we can have that conversation. Teachers are naturally good at giving questions to each other as a teaching strategy to say, now, Michelle, I know you've gone over this concept 14 times, but could you explain it to me one more time? Because I'm not sure we all get it. So we're doing that for each other and for the students. Doing things like Kahoot, quizzes, any of those wonderful online kind of games, harder to do with one teacher and 100 kids, but if we divide into multiple groups, then we can each be going concurrently and more students have a chance to actually play and participate and be active. So that's great for team teaching. We're doing the exact same thing at the same time, right? Getting it going, and depending on how we're doing it, it might be team teaching, might look like parallel, but we're trying to engage more kids. And then the other thing is, remember that your special educators are there because they have different expertise. So it will be fantastic if, we could divide up, come up with those strategies like the graphic organizers and things like that, and use them for everybody. Give mnemonics for everybody. Maybe screencasts so that we can add some audio and visual notes to our PowerPoints, or caption them and video them and send them on to everybody. It's something that might be good for one or two students, but it's great for everybody. Oh, well, now we got, my co-teacher is distracting everyone with a rocket launch. You can tell she's our STEM person, right? Our math and science person. She's super excited. And she is in Georgia, so she's excited to see it. All right, those were my quick, not so quick, but that usually could have taken a full day. And we could have gone into a whole lot of stuff. I just wanted to make sure you were familiar with a bunch of these approaches, really starting to think about the different ways to use your partner, both special ed, general ed, and general ed, special ed, so that it doesn't feel like, I'm a credentialed teacher and I feel like an assistant. Or I feel like I have somebody who could work with me and that person's just, sitting back and not doing anything. So both of you, I want you both to feel like you're empowered to come up with cool new ways to teach all of your students. Please know, I am not deluded to think that because there are two of you now, all of the child problems will go away and every kid will be motivated and on time and learn perfectly. However, more can, because you've got both of you to start problem solving. And it's really, truly about the relationships and about the communication. So you're going to get some content strategies because we felt like that was really important. And ultimately what we're calling this is strategies to support, grade level strategies to support access for students who are struggling with that. So Michelle's going to be working with the ELA group. Barb is going to be working with the math group. We're going to give you about 45 minutes, 30 of which will be strategies, 15 will be them getting to know you a little bit more for future. Bring everybody back for the end just to touch base. And again, when we see you in June, it will be more about okay, how do you plan for all this? But at least you'll have had some time to get it into your head. Remember that Padlet also is going to provide you a lot of co-teaching information for those of you who feel like you're really new to this and you'd like to read a little bit more and see some videos and get involved. Okay, let me take any questions before I get you in the breakout room. Any questions for this?
I'm assuming she's recording.
Now it is now. Yeah, we just turned on. Thank you.
The thing is, it's not going to be able to record each group. So it's only there when I come in. So when I leave, it's going to probably stop recording. We'll see. We'll see if it'll continue. But usually you can't record in the breakout rooms and keep it going. I'll try.
Thank you. The first thing I wanted to touch base with you on are the standards, because I know that as special educators and general educators, all that we do in the classroom is related to these K-12 standards for English language arts. And you know, we're going to start there as our basis, and then we're going to move forward. So keeping those things in mind, I did find these references in your standards, and I think that this is an important point, that the standards set the grade-specific standards but do not define the intervention methods or materials necessary to support students. So I think that's where we're focusing our energies on today, and what we're going to be talking about is going beyond the scope of the standard definition of instruction and looking at supports that are appropriate for English language learners, for students with special needs, and any other student who isn't quite ready to approach the content standards, is, you know, some needing some differentiation. So that's where we're going to focus our energies today. And I first wanted to look at the reading standards that are you're very familiar with: key ideas and details, craft and structure, integration of knowledge and ideas, and the range of reading and level of text complexity. And so my first question for all of you, and you can unmute, how do you go about differentiating for your students with these standards? What are some strategies you've tried?
Well, for the range of reading and level of text complexity, Scott and I have used a variety of different things. So various texts, so alternative text. We also have used some audio recordings.
Not a lot of differentiation or accommodations for the different needs of learners. So that's the part, that's why they need a teacher, and that's your job, to take the curriculum and apply it to the group of learners that you have this term, this year, this week, this session, whatever it is. You're going to find yourself adapting to their needs every time. So I want to talk a little bit about our mindset. Your role as a teacher, you are a conductor of learning, you are a coach, a mentor, a problem solver. You're a co-teacher here, putting two heads together, and you're a leader. All of those hats are worn at different times, and sometimes all of the time. And it's going to be a blessing in the end for you to have a partner to share all of that with. So what is a co-teacher not? Notice the two characters in the canoe. They're facing a different direction. One's paddling one way, one's paddling another. And Wendy talked a little bit about arranged marriages. A lot of times when two teachers get put together, they're not.
Hello, I'm Amit, and this is a demo of Dictation, a speech recognition app that lets you type with your voice. There is no setup required. There are no apps to install. There is absolutely no training required. All you need is Google Chrome and a computer that is connected to the internet. Dictation can recognize all the popular languages. Whether you speak English, Hindi, Spanish, German, or Arabic, chances are that you will find Dictation useful. One of the very useful and unique feature of Dictation is support for voice commands. So if you want to insert a new paragraph, all you say is new paragraph. Or you can say go to sleep, and Dictation would stop listening to your commands. And voice commands aren't just limited to English. You can insert commands in Spanish, French, and a lot of other languages. So for instance, if you're from India and you speak Hindi, you can just open the Hindi voice commands page and find all the available voice commands for you.
And so I think about our English language learners and how powerful this could be for our English language learners if we used it as a tool for ensuring access and allowing them to perhaps dictate in their target language, and then, you know, to look at different ways to use this to support their scribing. So if you haven't used it or checked out dictation.io, go there from Chrome, and it's a powerful tool.
Your language.
We're going to move to the next slide, and we're going to talk about speaking and listening and comprehension and collaboration, which when Wendy was talking about students working in small groups, I think that speaks to this comprehension and collaboration. And then can someone share with us what they do now in their classroom to support attainment of this standard, to differentiate for our students? So I'm going to make a recommendation and recommend that you check out Voki if you haven't already. I'm sure that most of you have. And students love, just like they love those options in Storyboard, they love to create their own customizable speaking avatars. It just speaks to their need to be involved with technology. And so here's my avatar I created. And when I use this, when I teach students who need to do presentations who aren't, all that happy about speaking and using their own picture, I often have them type, and then the typed message is then spoken for them. So here's an example.
Your students can share their knowledge and ideas with a personalized Voki. They type the words they wish to speak, and the Voki does their presentation.
So that's a very simple, reasonable way for students to have support. Yes.
I want to interrupt to let you know we did not see the actual avatar speaking. So it probably opened. That's happened to me before too. And that's why I want to tell you, because sometimes people won't share with me that they didn't see what I thought they saw. Yeah, sometimes if it's opening in a different box, it's behind your screen. And so it's not, we're only shared your PowerPoint. So just so you know, they didn't actually see they can see your super cute avatar, but she didn't talk in front of them.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Wendy. So my apologies for that. But how many people have ever used a Voki before? Can you give me a thumbs up if you've used a Voki? No? Vokis are great. I would suggest that thank you, Catherine. I would suggest that you check out Vokis and think about how you could use them to engage students, to have them do some customizable speaking, and then for collaboration purposes. So moving on to our standards of listening. One strategy, which is not technology driven, that I would recommend is guided note taking. And the beauty of creating guided notes within Microsoft Word is that you can differentiate them based on the needs of your students. So for some, you're going to have lots of support, and for others, you will have much more of an outline look to your guided note taking, but creating these as sort of study guides, either for while you're listening to a lecture or while you're engaging with text. So you would either be completing it during reading or during listening. And depending on the needs of the student, you would have different supports. I love guided note-taking. I find these as well as Cornell Notes. If you've used Cornell Notes, they're a great way to structure that process for students and to make something very abstract look very concrete. Anyone else use any different supports for differentiating the listening process? Any strategies out there that you find to be effective?
I've used T-notes before, where on one side of the paper they write a question and then on the other side they write the answer, or like on the one side they write a heading and then like 3 points about it if they're like summarizing something. So I've done that before.
Love that one. I love T-notes. I used to use bare bones summary, and it really was a very simple graphic organizer, but it provided for my students that structure that they needed so that they had an understanding of what to do next. So the bare bones summary was just a graphic organizer where they took notes, and then the intent was then to go back to their notes and to eliminate those things that weren't supporting the main idea, and then to take what was left and to write a very small summary. I found that my students with disabilities were very happy to use this structure when I asked them to summarize content, and it really was very open-ended. So I would suggest that as well if you haven't used bare bones summaries. And then there are the conventions of standard language and vocabulary. As we know, the standards expect us to be teaching vocabulary, and what we know about vocabulary instruction is it needs to be explicit as well as give students an opportunity to collect and learn on their own. And the more we read.
So for example, if you see that you have somebody like that disappears online, all of a sudden you don't see their picture, you make a note of that and then you talk about it, and it might require a follow-up call later by somebody. So those kind of things you miss when you're the teacher with a group of 50 or more online that you're trying to manage and keep track of. So there is a legitimate reason for that in the face-to-face classroom and in the online classroom. So parallel teaching. The bottom line for parallel teaching, and I haven't talked to Wendy about this because we didn't get a chance to. Oh, actually, I'm not going to talk about it here. I got another slide. But parallel teaching is a great opportunity to, like she said, teach the same content at in different ways. But I'm going to suggest that there isn't any rule that says, I mean, if you think about parallel lines, you can have more than one line that's parallel. It's not just two. And so if you're talking about a group of 100, instead of dividing the class in half, and again, I'm going out on a limb here because I don't know how your synchronous instruction goes, but maybe you divide the class into fours. And at one time you do 2 sessions that are a quarter of the kids each, and the following hour you do a session with 2 more groups. So now you've effectively broken down a class of 100 into 25, taking into account the ones that can't attend anyway. And it also gives you some flexibility to try to arrange some instructional times that might be maybe more convenient for some of your kids. Because once you get to high school, I know you're dealing with job schedules. Sorry,
Barb, one of our thoughts for next year is we have such a hard time getting our kids out of 9th grade with algebra and English, is we thought about pushing our larger numbers of special ed teachers down to 9th and 10th, really taking the manpower where the kids are, because we just have large numbers there of kids that have failed 9th grade over and over, you know, by the time they get to us. And so your idea, we had thought in a different way. So if we stick with the same model where we have 100 kids in a section, we might push 3, and this might kill you, gen ed teachers. I don't know if this is good or bad. These are ideas that we're thinking of. Push 3 special ed teachers in to work with that teacher, because, you know, if that could be like 4 parallel teaching sessions. This may be a totally bad idea. So, but this is just as we're thinking, because we have, like this year, for example, we have like 55 special ed kids in Algebra 1, you know, and so we have 2 teachers, 2 special ed teachers, well, actually Algebra 2B. So we repeat, if they fail Algebra 1A, they take it again second semester. So it's very confusing. So like this semester, we have kids that are repeating Algebra 1A, and then kids that went on to Algebra 2B or 1B.
And 1B, right.
So now our 2 9th grade special ed teachers are split. So that, you know, so we have poor Deb that's supporting like 40 kids that are repeating A, and then Adrian has like 20 kids that moved on to B, you know, so we're thinking like maybe we need to send the manpower where the students are, rather than saying, you're doing 9th grade algebra, you're doing 10th grade geometry or whatever. Like this is where the need is. We need to send 3 teachers to algebra 1 or whatever, you know, I mean, so.
Yeah, well, that's a huge caseload in that, especially, I mean, let's face it, if you're taking math in 9th grade, you're already behind. So,
well, we have, oh, like if we're repeating, you mean if they're repeating?
Well, you know, okay, so I don't know the scope and sequence of math, the traditional track, but most states have gone to algebra as an 8th grade course. You earn high school credit. So if you're on grade level, you're taking it in 8th grade.
Really kind of the, not really kind of the advanced kids. I mean, not in our school. I don't think most of them get out of 8th grade with algebra.
Yeah.
we have pre-algebra. We have pre-algebra in 9th grade also. So yeah, that doesn't happen here much.
Again, online learning is an alternative school. So you get students that have special needs, whether they're related to distance and travel and those kind of things, or academic or social emotional needs. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, what you do is tough. Station teaching. So this is I have the same thought about this. So you break up, you create stations. Either that was a great example, different strategies for solving simultaneous equations, or maybe you go through concrete, representational, abstract sequence of instruction. There's a lot of different ways you either do it by topic or by strategy, but you divide them up and you rotate the kids. So in the face-to-face model, that's usually 4 groups, 2 are teacher-led and 2 are not. But in your model, 4 groups aren't 4 small groups. I mean, you know, you'd have 4 25 student stations. You know, it's probably going to be more effective and more productive, especially since you can't man them all, to break them up into smaller groups, have more stations, let the kids rotate more frequently. And where that's something that we might do in the same hour in a face-to-face situation, you might do it over a week, you know, in a variety of time slots. So, and you can still do the thing where one teacher develops one lesson and teaches that over and over to all of the kids, as opposed to having to learn a whole bunch of different things. And you know, how you approach this is going to depend on the math, the math skills of the special ed teacher. You know, just like how you support kids with disabilities or below grade level learners is a function of how well the gen ed teacher is comfortable with those things. So it's going to be different for every partnership, for each co-teaching team, depending on their needs. And you know, you invest in developing teams and you keep those teams together. You keep the special ed teachers in the content area long enough to develop the skills and then use them. So, you know, that's one of the challenges is we find ourselves with the need to move teachers around. And so 1 year I'm teaching geometry, 1 year I'm teaching algebra 1. That's easy for a math teacher, but not so easy for a special ed teacher. Alternative teaching, you know, this is, you know, we see it in the picture as it's 2 groups, one's larger, one's smaller. And while that's true in a face-to-face setting, it doesn't have to be true in an online setting. The real differentiation between alternative and parallel is that now we're talking about learner readiness. You know, I need to pre-teach vocabulary. I have students that are missing these prerequisite skills, so I'm going to create a set of supports that I'm going to use when I pull that group out. Or maybe I brought a group of learners who are way ahead of the curve, And so we're going to do some deeper learning, some enrichment things related to the same learning goal. And you really need to think hard about which group, and again, we're talking about readiness, not disabilities. Which group does the gen ed math teacher need to teach? It's not always the math skill group. It's not always the grade level group. It's not always the bigger group. I mean, who sometimes, again, depending on your partner, sometimes it's the math teacher that would serve the students who aren't getting it better because they know more strategies or more ways to explain something. Or maybe it's the math teacher that needs to take the enrichment group, which is just maybe 10% of your kids. And that leaves the special ed teacher with the whole group. So again, I think that as we educators, people who are thinking about co-teaching, that we're going to reshape what this looks like in the online environment, because we don't have the same constraints. Team teaching, you know, that's a tough one. Parallel teaching is tough too, because you have to have content competency.
Sorry, Barb, I'm interrupting you just because I want to make sure I'm checking on time, and I'm going to go do the same thing with Michelle. So
I got a timer set.
Okay, good. So you have about 7 minutes left.
7 minutes of my 30.
Nope.
Was that a yup or a nope?
That was a nope. Remember that this whole thing is at 1:15.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's right, because you went over, so we didn't get our 45 minutes. Got it.
Okay. So I'll make it an extra. we can't keep them longer.
No, that's okay. It's not a problem. We'll be done. We'll be done.
We'll do it at 1:20. I will bring everybody back at
we got
1:20.
We got another month. Okay.
Yeah, 1:20 my time. I just want to make sure so that we're on the same page with Michelle as well.
Okay.
So tell everybody 1:20. I'll bring you back.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. So I'm not going to.
So that looks like a cool website to me.
Thank you. I love that. That is one of my favorite 60-second recap. Who else is going to share something they found when we did our deep dive into the resources?
Hey, I'm just going to interrupt, Michelle.
Yes.
Just
hello.
because I'm checking in with both you and Barb. So you have 10 minutes left total before I'm going to bring everybody back at 1:20.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Keep up.
How about Ramona? I'll just call on folks now. Imagine
I'm good with
catching
that.
a virtual ball.
I don't mind being in the hot seat. I
Thank
also
you.
like Newsella. One other one I use, it's not on the list, is readworks.org, which is similar. And I like that one too. Newsella seemed to kind of lock us out a little bit more from getting data. So I like the ReadWorks, but the 60-second recap, I was actually watching some of those while we were super helpful if we're coming alongside those English teachers and need just, you know, some information on the story. And then the other one I liked was the one with the vocabulary flip, and just giving vocabulary words just to practice. So those are the ones that I liked. I'm sure I would like more, but those are the ones I had time to go through.
Thank you. Thank you. How about June? Have you had a chance to share?
So my mic's on, right? So
Yes.
I actually just shared in chat because I just would reiterate what Sarah and actually now Ramona has said. So the one that I really was spending time on is the 60-second recap. So apparently we all love it. Yay. And now we're going to implement it, right? So that's why I didn't say anything. It's just the same.
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay.
How about dictation.io? Was anyone currently using that? How about Scott? Scott? Oh, I'm sorry. Catherine, were you going? Go ahead, Catherine, and then
Oh, no, I was just going to say I've used a different dictation system that's a free add-on through Google Drive. And I had a couple of students who really just reluctant writers, and they really liked it. You know, the fact that
teaching in general. And then the next slide is not that one. Sorry, your little faces are. And then the online teaching or online co-teaching, what you anticipate. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do some type of a Google form survey, and I'll send it out to you to get your input. Because when we come back the next time, I want to address your concerns, the things you're worried about, the problems that you encounter that maybe we have solutions for, things that you can try. So, you know, one and done professional development doesn't work, you know, and like sit and get doesn't work. So I'm excited that we're going to get to spend more time. I'm excited about this little Protege app that is going to give us an opportunity to collaborate. Just as I've been talking for the past 30 minutes or so, I've had like 6 of my online students write me in an app we use to communicate. So, you know, one of the challenges I know that you face in online instruction is having boundaries. You know, we all want to have a life, and our students work at different times, especially in high school. I have a niece who teaches math in Florida Virtual School, and most of her synchronous stuff is at night because her kids are not in school and they work during the day. So anyway, we got a minute maybe. If anybody has something that they want to say, I hope you're excited about co-teaching. It's so different than push and support. And I think for special ed teachers in particular, it's going to challenge your math knowledge. For gen ed teachers, you're going to have to let go a little and let somebody else be responsible and share that responsibility. Sandy, do special ed teachers have access to all of the data in gradebook for all of the kids in these classrooms yet?
Yes. Yeah. They do.
So literally they could share the role of student contacts and follow-ups and that kind of stuff, no problem.
Yes, they could. Yeah, they could share anything.
That's good news.
Yeah, and work together.
I appreciate that much either.
Barb, I was going to ask you, where in Georgia, which campus are you? Are you in Statesboro?
Well, I'm in Savannah, but
okay.
You know, I can spit at Statesboro from here. So
okay, my in-laws lived in Statesboro.
Yeah. Well, Savannah's a real city and Statesboro's a farm. So
so one of the benefits, and every platform is a little bit different. One of the things I like about Zoom is that you can close the breakout rooms, which forces people back. I know that it can be rude because you're in the middle of a conversation, but that's why I tried. Were you guys getting my broadcast messages? So, okay. So that is a way that I try and help with the transition so that people know, okay, 10 minutes left, 4 minutes left, you're coming back. You can also set up in Zoom how long people have to come back. So I just had it as a minute, but you could set it up where you could tell them we're closing and you have 5 minutes to get back in the other room. So that's another way if you want to allow people some transition, go in the bathroom, brain breaks, whatever. But, you know, we're trying to kind of wrap you guys up here. I was able to bop back and forth between the 2 rooms, and it was a very different dynamic, different conversation, different content. So it was a way that we wanted to be able to model doing parallel teaching, in this case, with different content. Obviously, the intent was not to say, let's just give you co-teaching stuff just in your content. We could do that, and we'll continue to do that, but really give you some additional strategies related to your content area, and for you to hear from someone who might be there for you to answer some content strategies in the future, not just me. I'll be supporting and working with Michigan Virtual Charter Academy, but really these are going to be your content people, so I wanted to make sure you have a chance to meet them. So as we do this final little couple minute wrap up, I have our what, so what, and now what. I thought it would be really lovely for us, and if you don't mind doing it with your audio, if you're able to speak, and again, there's not a whole lot, but if a couple of you share out what you learned so that we know that you did actually learn something in these 3 hours. What is something that's your takeaway? And it can be anything from a basic strategy to a concept to anything. You learned that you can spit at Statesboro, apparently, and it's a farm.
I learned that we are at the infancy of the co-teaching. So, I mean, toddler maybe, we're not like there yet, but we're getting there. And I find that we're quite cohesive.
Good.
So now we are going to get to the more of the bonding and the marriage part of it.
Fantastic. And I appreciate that you're saying, the baby steps kind of toddler, whatever, because for some of you, you have already said through your chats and surveys and whatever that I love my partner, we're great. So you might be flying with this. There might be just things you didn't know that you're now able to apply. For others of you may be very resistant or nervous because you don't have that relationship yet. You haven't tried that yet. And we're absolutely fine with helping everyone where they are. And that's why Michelle and Barb are going to be coaches and mentors and just take you where you are and not expect that all of you will do all of this. This is a baby step process, not a do it all the exact same way kind of process. What else? What's another what? Make us feel good about the last 3 hours.
I think this kind of reestablishes some of the things that I've been thinking about. I know since Mark joined us like mid-year, Marcus is my partner.
Good word.
Yes, and he pushes into my class right now, and I've known since he started with me that I do not utilize him to the best of his capabilities, which he has many. So I think some of these ideas just kind of reiterate what I've been thinking about, and I look forward to learning more about it. I'm very type A and a little bit of a control freak when it comes to my classroom. I've had some really good special ed marriages and some not so good ones. So I'll be honest about that with myself, just knowing that it's really hard for me to let go. But that's something that's necessary to really having a successful relationship when it comes to special ed, especially in the more co-teaching style and less me teach, you stand over there,
right.
Which I think is a really hard thing to do sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. And I love, Jamie, first of all, that you're being honest, that there are some aspects that will be comfortable for you and some that won't, but that you recognize that it could be better for kids and could be better for you. It's just how it rolls out. So you and Mark are going to have to talk about the aspects that, okay, I know I need to share the stage, but that's really uncomfortable for me. And Mark you may end up saying to her, like, there's certain aspects I don't actually want to be in front, or, I'm more comfortable with this first anyway. So you guys will work it out together. And I also like, Jamie, that you started with saying, you understood it was push in and it was your class, and that it's morphing, and it will eventually become, it's our class, our kids. But that's not where you guys have been. And we're not expecting that you have always thought this way. This is a new way to think. And just knowing that there's, you get a credential, none of you would want to just sit back and feel like, what do? I just individually talk to one kid every once in a while. It's kind of boring.
Yeah, for sure. And he's awesome. And I know that he has a lot of skills that he can bring to the table. So I'm excited to figure out a way to make our marriage work better.
Oh, it's so cute. We're like the marriage counselors. This is your newlyweds. This is delightful.
And in the special education small group, I can totally get what we're merging into. I have over a dozen kids who are going completely different directions, so this steers them right together in 1 hour with all the rest. So it completely makes sense to how this is merging. And obviously this is a brand new concept, doing what we're already doing in this group here, but I love the thought.
Yeah, good. All right, excellent. So for the rest of you, maybe you got strategies with your group. I heard the ELA group doing a ton of different strategies that they could employ for all kids. Keep in mind that our goal, remember, is all kids, because students who have disabilities are general education students first. And we recognize that you all have so many students on your caseload. It wouldn't make sense if we're going to spend all this time and effort just for kids with IEPs. So really, truly be thinking that this is to support those students who, you know, have absolutely nothing on paper that is a disability, but they just never show up. Or when they show up, you know, when they show up, they're getting great grades. It's just that they don't do stuff asynchronously. They only do it synchronously, or, you know, whatever. You guys have a million reasons that a student might struggle. The goal is you have 2 of you at least to work on that. And then all the different modifications. So I introduced just the basic approaches, and I heard in the math group that Barb was doing additional ways of just saying, hey, look, when we're talking about parallel, it doesn't just have to be the 2 groups. You know, I even jumped in and on a chat on that one, say, yeah, absolutely. Divide the class in half and then have stations going. So both of you have 4 stations going to reduce your sizes. Or one of you could have half of the group and be doing direct instruction. The other one could just be having stations. Like there's so many ways that we can do this. And we're going to do all those different applications as we go along. This is just your introduction to start thinking about it. Now, that was the what. The so what? Well, so there's a lot that this is going to impact. I'm going to give you some homework. Your homework is the share worksheet. And if you recall, I uploaded that on the file. Everybody has that? Yes, you remember you got that? All right. Remember that I also provided in the Padlet, which I will show you again in just 30 seconds. But the share worksheet is a way for you and your partner, I would suggest strongly, fill it out individually first. And it was created and published multiple times related to brick and mortar schools. So there might be some questions that you think, well, that doesn't apply to us, and that's fine, skip those over. But fill it out individually, really think about your preferences. So Jamie, you said you're kind of type A. Really be honest on there, like, it makes me so nervous when, blah, 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 right? Fill it out, the pet peeves, all that stuff. Then you and your partner, or partners if there's multiple, share with each other, and you'll find that the questions that you have the similar answers to, you never have to talk about again. Kids can't play mom against dad. But the ones that you have as different, those are the ones to flush out, talk about. It will start your conversation about roles and responsibilities. Okay, so that's going to be your homework. And then I just want to remind you that we are going to be seeing you again on June 24th, that the focus of that day will be the co-planning. So we'll still bring in this co-instruction, we'll still have a conversation about co-assessment, but co-planning will tell you how to find some time, different strategies for it. We'll give you a structure for co-planning and have you actually practice it with your partner with something that you're going to teach. And we'll have our mentors here as well to help with that. Okay, so those are kind of your big picture things. And then here is a little Padlet for you. This gives you a lot of different, I have 14 books on education, and most of them relate to co-teaching or inclusive education or what really works with exceptional learners or universal design. So those are a few pictures for you. The QR code you can scan right now on your phone, or you can take a picture of this screen. You also have it in the PowerPoint that I uploaded for you. The Padlet has additional articles, 10 or 50 ways to keep your co-teacher, 10 tips for co-planning, what to look for, listen for, and ask for related to co-teaching observation. Like, you guys, there's a ton. Don't worry, it's not homework, you don't have to, but some of you, I want to respect that some of you want to go deep. And if you want to go deep, there's a lot of information on the Padlet for you. If not, just make sure that you do your share worksheet and that you talk to your partner at least once in the next month, hopefully many, many times.
And can I just mention very quickly on this one, the Beyond Co-Teaching Basics, we purchased those books. We were going to do a book study this year, and Dr. Murawski and I kind of talked about that. That's one of her books that she did with Dr. Lochner, who we're working with. She's not here today, but that was over our heads. That's why we stopped the book study, because that was the advanced study of co-teaching.
Yes,
so we're backing it up.
Right, that's the Beyond Basics. That one is really about using data, informing PLCs and all this stuff. And it's great. I mean, obviously we wrote it, so it's clearly brilliant, but it's not strategy oriented, and it's not about beginning. If any of you are looking to begin, the one I would strongly recommend for you all would be the blue one that's on there, the light blue one that's right above Beyond Co-Teaching Basics, that says Collaborative Teaching in Secondary Schools. And it was written for brick and mortar, but the vast majority would be very available. I think maybe, you know, like the actual scheduling and stuff like that might be different, but the vast majority of the building relationships and using different approaches and strategies and things would be super adaptable and available for the remote learning.
So, and we may be able to purchase that for anyone who would be interested. So we'll do a survey to see.
Sure. All right, so as we leave you, first of all, thank you very much. And I want to thank Michelle and Barb for coming in and spending their time and creating those presentations for you all. Are there any last minute questions before? And by the way, Sandy, for timing for June 24th, is it the same time as we did today?
Yes, and thank you for your flexibility. I can talk to you afterward, but yes, it would be the 1:30 our time, so 10:30 California time.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So
thank you.
10:30 to 1:30 for us. And
Wendy and Michelle and Barbara, I just want to say thanks so much for doing this for the high school. We are very excited about this co-teaching model. And teachers, I know this is a crazy busy time of year, especially with seniors in their final exam and out in tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
So thank you so much for coming today and staying focused. And I keep thinking about all the ways too that we can apply this to gen ed in teaching together as well and partnering. So I'm excited. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
A good baby step. And I know that the math group is going to get a survey from Barb. We'll probably just go ahead and do a similar survey with the ELA group so that Michelle has that data as well. Okay. And again, all of you, thank you. This is an ongoing thing. We will continue to support you, and we'll just build those relationships over time so we figure out what you need. But feel free to be active participants, because we can't know what you need unless you tell us. But for right now, what we all need to do is leave.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Have a great summer. We'll see you in a month.